So where does the name Orenda come from then?
It actually came from like I think I started Orenda Tribe maybe 7 years ago when my daughter was around maybe 9 or 10 years old. But it was the feeling that I had at that point in my life that I wanted to get out of corporate and start doing upcycling. So Orenda is actually an Iroquois word, not a Dene word. That means like inside each of us, we have the force to create change. And so for me, that was to create a sustainable lifestyle. And actually, at this point in my life, this next chapter is all about giving back and being of service and passing on whatever I've learned in my lifetime to, a new generation or anybody that needs that help, specifically in Indigenous communities. Because even just looking at this pandemic, I don't know anybody else that's Navajo that's had the background I have in supply chain, sourcing, even like this whole career I used to have in fast fashion. I'm having to use that skill set now because, I'm not the least bit phased by the fact that we need to get stuff out there like next week, or that I need to figure out how to get goods from China to New Mexico in a week. That's pretty normal stuff when you work on a big corporation and you need to create wealth and you need to have timelines, and sometimes they're crazy timelines. And so, yeah, the whole thing with pandemic, kind of a like if you business structure it out of how you can maximize what you can do in a short amount of time, it's pretty much like any quick turn fashion cycle. So that's kind of how we approached it. First of all, figure out how to make it, figure out how to make it really effectively, and then figure out how to get it from there to the people on the reservation as quickly as possible. So that's kind of what we've been up to for 45 days. Actually, at this point, it's like 48 days.
What made you decide to go from this fast fashion to more sustainable upcycling and vintage, and now especially focusing with working with the indigenous artists that you work with?
Yeah. So I'm going to start off with why did I make the jump? It's really, really clear cut. I had a kid. I had a child. I had a daughter. We lived in California at the time. I'm sitting there taking her to all these farm camps and learning, teaching her to be really conscious about the environment and sustainability. But yet, mommy was staying up every night working for a large company that I'm pretty sure most of what I designed is in a landfill right now because it was, cheap, fast turn production that really didn't have any reason to be on the planet, other than just creating wealth for a big organization. So I had that moment where I was like, I'm being completely inauthentic to my own kid. So it just was like this wake up call of like, well, maybe now's the time. Maybe now I get really brave and just decide I'm going to jump out of this and try to be a better mom. And to be a better mom for me was to do the things I was trying to teach my child, which is really set an example. It's through our actions that our children learn so much from us. So for her to see that I was doing things in organic fabrics and quick turn production in downtown LA instead of mommy flying to China all the time, to work in plant dyes, to work in little, in small batches of things that were meaningful. And so that became our new life. And, eventually I've always been a vintage collector since I've been shopping. I just love old things. So I just started thinking, wow, I should just try this thing that I had in my head of revitalizing, recolorizing things from the past. It started off as like a side gig because I was still doing, other consulting gigs. And eventually it just took over because it became what I needed to do. And she was actually a big part of that. She became my co-director in Orenda Tribe when she was, I guess that probably was when she was 11 or 12 years old. She was starting to model for me. We were doing the vintage buys together. And all through high school, she got to be part of the brand. So it was just an amazing journey for a mommy-daughter team
I love
to
that.
build something like this And she's still involved, you know, when she can be, but she's starting to live her young adult life on her own. And she's an amazing artist just on herself. So when I talk to people and we talk about like how different the pandemic is for somebody living on the reservation, imagine like that first week when we all rushed out and bought all the food and brought it home. So imagine if you didn't have the money to do 2 weeks. And then on top of that, imagine if you didn't have a refrigerator or a freezer to store it in because you don't have electricity. Imagine during that whole first month when we were scared to death and we were washing our hands a million times. Imagine if you lived someplace that didn't have running water. So it was just the perfect storm for this virus to exponentially grow at this pace. We didn't get enough PPE out early enough, and we're suffering the effects of that. I'm really worried about our frontline healthcare because they're extremely exposed right now with very little PPE. So that's why we jumped in last week and raised a bunch of money to ship things to a doctor who's really given us great guidance on what's needed. And we're just hustling to get it through customs and get it delivered to her in Flagstaff. So yeah, it's things like that that we need to do. It's how it works. My whole focus right now is protection. Every single person on the Navajo reservation needs a high quality, durable mask. Like, I love the fact we're getting disposable donations, but it doesn't fix the long-term solution that we need something that's going to last for a long time, that somebody can wash, you know, because it's going to get dirty based on the way things are out there. So I want to deliver something beautiful. You know, the production we're doing with Bethany Yellowtail is made out of poly spandex. And if you guys have ever worn a pair of Outdoor Voices leggings, like this mask is going to be around for 5 years at least if they take care of it. So we want to invest in long-term solutions and not just constantly try to fix that immediate moment. So yeah, we highly suggest people, instead of buying disposable masks, they help us fund it through our Spread Light, Shine Light fund, because we use the money from that fund to pay the factory in LA that's converting and making these beautiful masks. Hey, Shanti, can you throw me one of those masks from over there?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so you can see it. So yeah, and that's something that, like, again, I don't want to stop doing this until we have a surplus, because it's hitting Navajo Nation hard now. It's not to say it's not going to hit other indigenous tribes in the next, 6 months. So I would like to just keep making them and build a big fat surplus. So whenever this thing moves and grows,
Please.
yeah, thank you, dear. So this is the one that we did with Outdoor Voices. They donated fabric.
Oh,
And because it's got Lycra, it kind of stretches to fit all sizes. It's breathable because, it's an activewear fabric. It's quick drying. You can wash it. It's awesome. And it's something compared to a disposable surgery mask, that we get, those boxes, which are so kind that everybody's donating. It just, I guess it's probably part of my socially conscious head saying, oh my gosh, if we just had something that lasted and didn't go in a landfill, that's what we want. One thing I do want to talk about, because there's a lot of language on Instagram, just so you guys get a little lesson in some of the Navajo words. So one of the things I did say is dine. It's D-I-N-E. That means the same word, it's Navajo. So most people that are non-native call it the Navajo reservation, but most people that are Navajo refer to ourselves as dine. So just so you don't get confused when you see that on my Instagram. The other thing, the Navajo reservation, like I said, is 27,000 square miles. It's broken up into agencies. An agency is like a section of it that's sort of like a county in non-native land. So when you see agency, northern agency, eastern agency, these are big areas that are sort of like counties. And then there's chapters. So chapters are like a township, and it's like a chapter house is sort of the same as a community center, and that's where you go to vote. That's where you go for picking up, if we send donations en masse, they go to their chapter house. So that might kind of break down some of the language you're seeing on Instagram that you're like, what does that mean? I don't know what that means. So that's what that means. The same things I'm learning, because I'm learning so much in my first 10 months here. I'm the little toddler telling you guys about how excited I am about this thing or this word or this community. And like, that's my job, is to share this native culture so everybody can participate, everyone can learn, everybody can be part of the change. And the change so expansively needs to happen in the future that it's only going to happen through the partnership of people that aren't native, because we're all Americans, we're all living here. We can't say we're all separate. It's like, you know, we're all here, and this is a situation that needs to change. It does, and it's going to take a lot of people with that mindset for it to happen. So I welcome questions. I welcome the support from everyone, because, you know, it allows me to do this in a bigger way and affect more lives. And that's my goal. You know, I've only got like, what, 25 more years here on the planet, you know?
You're still young. Don't talk like that.
Well, no, it's just inevitable. I will no longer be
You're
here,
okay.
but to plant the seed in so many people's minds of the possibilities of what could be, because you're the ones that are going to make that happen. You're the future. It's the next generations coming up that are going to be the ones that have to figure this out. So, you know, that's my job as somebody that's at this stage in my life, in my career, in my business, is to pass on any knowledge I have that will make an impact for the next generations. There's something within Indigenous culture called like 7 generations. It's like when you talk about sustainability and you make these choices of, hey, do we invest in a long-term mask that will stay and be here for a while, be very effective? Or do I do a cloth mask that, or I'm sorry, a disposable mask that's going to go into a landfill? Like, you have to think, which of those is going to affect the next 7 generations, not just me, not just my daughter, grandchildren. So you pick the thing that makes the most sense long term, and that's sustainable thinking. It's a traditional way people think if you're native, but you know, it just all comes full circle into what we're doing as sustainable fashion designers, and the fact that I'm Indigenous. There's just another part of my brain and my blood memory that kind of pulls up other things